Hey everybody, Mr. Regan here. Today we're going to be looking at how to complete the modeling tool that we're going to be using to show what's going on with our pod, and more specifically what's going on with our pod during those two different claims, those two different possibilities of why our pod is moving in the opposite direction, and more importantly, how different forces could have caused that same exact change or that same effect. So let's go ahead and look at our modeling tool that we're going to be using. It's going to look exactly the same for both claim 1 and claim 2, but obviously we're going to use it differently to show those different examples of force affecting the change in velocity of our object. So if you remember, we have our little comic strip here, and our pod obviously was approaching our space station, and then one of these two claims occurred. The thrusters caused the pod to move in the opposite direction, or the thrusters only slowed the pod and it didn't stop. And that caused it to hit the space station and bounce in the opposite direction. And that's what we see here in that fourth comic strip. So we're going to be using our modeling tool that we've practiced with to show both these claims. And we're going to start by looking at the very first one. The thrusters cause the pod to move in the opposite direction. So in this case, the force is being exerted by our thrusters, causing it to change its velocity in a different direction. We got to show how that's going to happen. So when you get into our modeling tool, it's going to look like this. You're going to see the first and second row here. And if at any point you forget kind of what you're doing, you're more than welcome to click on the instructions. It'll kind of break that down for you as well. So the first row is showing you kind of what should have happened with our pod. So the pod should have had a medium velocity as it approached our space station. It should have applied the thruster force in the opposite direction, pushing it against its overall velocity, and then bringing it to a stop. Notice the force here is a medium force equal to its velocity, causing it to stop. So that's what should have happened. We are going to use this bottom row here to kind of show what happened for claim 1, or what could have happened for claim 1. So you're going to start obviously by having your objects placed, and these objects represent your pod. And your job is to think about what force would have been applied, okay, to cause our pod to then move in the opposite direction. And you're going to have to move our velocity tails over to the after force column and our force arrows into the during force column to recreate this situation. So thinking about our very first claim, the thrusters cause the pod to move in the opposite direction. Okay, so we know we have a medium force approaching. We have to apply some sort of force to cause it to move in the opposite direction. So this is where you're going to obviously add velocity tails and force arrows to show that claim 1. Okay, and then you'll hit your hand in button when you're done. All right, so that's claim 1. All right, it's going to walk you through how to turn that in next. But when you're done with claim 1, you're then going to move on to claim 2. Now, claim 2, set up the exact same way, but then for claim 2, you're going to focus on this idea. The thrusters only slowed the pod, it didn't stop it. The pod hit the space station, which made it bounce and move in the opposite direction. So now we're pulling more in. We're pulling in this idea that the thrusters didn't stop, okay? So we'll have to think about what force the thrusters were applying, and then what force the station applied in this situation, okay, causing it to bounce off. So thinking about the force of the station, and then obviously what would it look like as it traveled in the opposite direction. So we will be doing that for claim number 2. So you'll do claim number 1, you'll walk through the steps in the slideshow and turn it in, and then you'll do claim number 2. Again, it'll have the 2 rows showing you what you should do. You'll have the instructions button. You'll recreate the bottom row to show that second claim and hand it in. And then obviously we'll move on from there. Okay, so fill out your survey. If you put your X in that red row, call me in right away. We'll break things down together. Otherwise, let me know if you need anything, and good luck.